Bon dia, everybody. It's great to be here today to talk to you about Giving Tuesday and to talk to you a bit as well about how philanthropy is changing and about how the world is changing. So I'm going to start by talking a bit in a broader sense about the trends we see in the world right now, how the world is changing and what it is we need to do about it. So I want to tell you just two different stories to start. This is a story of an organization in America called Patients Like Me. And Patients Like Me is like a Facebook group for people who are suffering from diseases. So people who have diseases. There are 500,000 people now on this platform. And they share with each other all of their health information. They share all of the drugs they are taking. They share all of the problems they are facing. So it's like a closed Facebook group for people who are suffering from diseases. And there's a story that comes out of this group, that there were a group of people suffering from ALS, the ALS disease. And they heard about a study. And the study suggested that if you took lithium, it would slow down the progress of ALS. So if you took lithium, it would slow down the progress of ALS. And this, if it had been true, this would have been a real great breakthrough, really terrific breakthrough. But there were skeptics. People weren't sure this was going to be true. And a number of the patients, in fact, hundreds of the patients, all went to their doctors. They all organized online together. They collaborated together online. They all went to their doctors. And they went to their doctors, and at their doctors, they got prescribed lithium. They all took the lithium over a period of months, and together they proved that lithium wasn't going to work to slow down ALS. They had used the crowd to test a drug in a time much, much quicker than the American government ever could have done the same thing. Here's another story, and this is a much more troubling story. So we all know around the world you see the growth of ISIS. There is a story of a 19-year-old schoolgirl in Glasgow in Scotland. And she was a nice middle-class family. She loved the work of Harry Potter. But she was at home and she started to get radicalized online. She started to go online and to hear about and fall into these different groups. And she soon was recruited by ISIS. She disappeared. This was a girl who was described as someone who couldn't find her way into town on the bus. But she disappeared for 4 days. Her parents got a phone call. It was from her, and she was on the border of Syria. And she was entering into Syria, having left Scotland. She then became a recruiter for ISIS. She became an amazing recruiter for ISIS. She used all of these social media tools and reached out to other girls all around the world and helped to recruit them so they too would leave their homes and head to Syria. So think about her story. Think about what she has, the tools she has possible in her hands, and think about how the US State Department tried to deal with that. So the US State Department, they were trying to combat ISIS. They've been trying to fight ISIS. They flew a plane over Syria. They dropped out cartoons from the back to try and persuade people not to join ISIS. Right? Think how ineffective that is compared to the schoolgirl who is reaching girls around the world and bringing them together. Think about those two worlds. So you think about the patients who are mobilizing to get their hands on their health. You think about a world where even terrorists are mobilizing to get their hands on the tools to communicate. And you start to think, what is really changing in the world? What's really changing here? Is it just technology? Is it just now that we all carry around our cell phones? Or is something more fundamental shifting? And so some of the work I've been doing with my colleague Jeremy Hymans is to think about what's really shifting in the world. And we made an argument in Harvard Business Review 2 years ago and then through a TED Talk to say that what's really changing in the world isn't technology. What's really changing in the world is power. So if you want to think about how the world is changing You need to think about not do I understand Twitter, not do I have a good Facebook account, but do I understand the way in which power is shifting? And so we are moving from a world that was based on what we call old power. Old power was held by very few people. It was very top-down. It was something where a small group of people decided what was best for the world, and they told the world what to do. That's how the world operated for a long time. What we're now seeing is the rise of new power. You're seeing this new power rise where power is not just a small number of people making all the decisions, but it's lots of people beginning to make decisions on their terms. It's about upload. It's about power being made by many, not by few. And when we think about philanthropy and the giving world, in the old power world, we just thought about donors, right? We have donors. Their job is to give us money. In the new power world, our job isn't to think about donors, but owners. How do we get people to own our cause? How do we get people not just to be the people who write us checks, but the people who mobilize on behalf of our causes? That seems to me the big shift. So here is a different way, just to get the idea set, here is a different way about thinking about old power and new power. So the old power world works like this. Does anyone know what this is? Okay, this is Tetris. Tetris was the biggest game in the world in the 1990s. And Tetris works like old power. So you think about it, it's top down, right? You drop down things on people's heads, it fits into neat lines, it gets quicker and quicker and quicker, and you have no way of changing the game, right? That's the old power mindset, and a lot of institutions are still behaving like the world works like Tetris. Our job as an institution is to drop things down on people's heads, and their job is to put them into neat lines for us. But what's changing is the world is operating not like Tetris. The world is operating like this game. Everyone know what this game is? This is Minecraft. So Minecraft is now as popular as Tetris was. Minecraft is as popular as Tetris, and it's a game like Tetris. It's a game made up of little blocks, right? We haven't changed. These are block-based games. But the difference is that Minecraft is a world built from the bottom up. This is a world where people create their own world, and their job is to co-create things together, not make things fit into neat lines. So I think the big shift, as you think about how the world is changing, we need to start creating projects that don't function like Tetris, but they function like Minecraft. And my favorite Minecraft story is the Citizens of Norway. The Citizens of Norway recreated the entire state of Norway in Minecraft. So all the citizens came together, they put all the blocks together, they recreated the whole of Norway in Minecraft, and the day before they were finished, an American snuck in and put the American flag right in the middle of Norway in Minecraft, right? So they grabbed this idea and made it their own. And so you see, in Minecraft, of course, you see everything in the world, but the real shift as you think about these things, as we think about Giving Tuesday, what we were trying to do with Giving Tuesday was say, we want to create a project that isn't designed for old power values, but is designed for new power values, to create something that is built for a world that is operating very differently. So I'll just go through some of these. In the old power world, it was all about exclusivity, right? It was all about managers, it was all about experts, it was all about long-term affiliation. In the new power world, it's much more about collaboration. It's much more about people doing things on their own terms. It's much more short-term often, but it's also more participatory. So as we think about how the world is changing, when we built Giving Tuesday, what we were trying to say was, how do you create a global movement that is not an old power movement, but is a new power movement? And so I'm going to ask my colleague Asha now to talk a little bit about how you take this thinking, how you take the idea of a new power movement, how do you take it from theory into practice? How do you create something that is designed to work in a new power world?
Bon dia. Nice to be here. Hi, everybody. So what Henry's describing is basically a shift in the way that we think about a programming model. And the 92nd Street Y is an organization, I imagine, that's similar to the organizations that many of you work at. It has a structure that has existed for a very long time. It's 143 years old. It's had the same way of working for a very long time. And so to reimagine a shift from old power values to new power values, as you can imagine, is quite a risky thing. The work that started with Giving Tuesday has actually led to, this is the 92nd Street Y in New York, it's a community and cultural center, has actually led to a whole other body of work, which I think bears mentioning only because Giving Tuesday was a risk, right? And it could have gone very badly for us and ended up costing us a lot of money and a lot of hassle. But instead, it has not only given birth to this amazing global movement, but also a lot of other adventurous projects that we're now able to take on, having learned so many lessons from Giving Tuesday. So we think about the values that we encapsulate in our own mission at the 92nd Street Y, and whatever your values are and your mission and your organization, I'm sure they're very similar, right? To make the world a better place, to foster education and dialogue, to improve people's lives, right? In whatever way happens to be meaningful to whichever different constituency we're talking about. And we serve people of all ages, all races, all walks of life. So we think about doing that work and not sacrificing that work, but then thinking about taking it out to the broader world. So the same values, right, at a very local place, in a very local footprint, and then the same values applied to the whole world. How do you think about doing that? Giving Tuesday was the first and is still the biggest way, but we have lots of other projects that now work on that same model. So I'm going to talk through some of the ways that we think about what was successful in the very beginning, not just for us, but also for some of those first partners who agreed to take part in Giving Tuesday and take on that risk themselves. These are sort of collective, shared early lessons. These are the kind of partners we work with now after 5 years of doing this work. In the beginning, this was much more like us calling up people and asking them if they'd take a risk in collaborating with us. And that dynamic has really grown and shifted over the past few years. So what are the lessons that we learned from Giving Tuesday that we can now apply to the rest of our work and that are really beneficial for us as an organization at both the local and the global level? So as I said, Giving Tuesday was a big risk, right, for us. And there's in the States, there's a very big and vibrant startup culture, right, which is known as being very different from the nonprofit world. So the nonprofit world is very trusted in the States, but it's not seen as being particularly creative or particularly collaborative. It's not defined by lots of different organizations working together to drive towards something common. It's much more defined as people being in competition with one another, of really putting their heads down and thinking about how to raise the money, how to meet the mission, doing the same things year over year in pretty much the same ways, having a pretty low risk tolerance, right? And the startup world is seen as having a very high risk tolerance and trying lots of new things. But they have a saying where they say, go big or go home, right? Which means like take really big risks, right? Do really big things, make a big splash. We handled Giving Tuesday slightly differently, right? So a kind of hybrid between those two ways of thinking. We decided to take some risks, but we didn't really have very much resource. We had really very little money. And so what we had to do was essentially try a whole bunch of small things that weren't going to cost us a whole lot and see what worked. And so there were a few of those early things that we did. One of the things was making a bet that Giving Tuesday was going to be more about people and about communities than it was about famous people and celebrities. So we could have placed all of those limited resources on trying to get a few very famous people to tweet for us or fundraise for different organizations or different causes, but these were actually the people we made the most investment in. And these are just regular people who, because of the way Giving Tuesday is structured, felt that it was meaningful and really took it and owned it and made it their own. And they ended up being some of the biggest amplifiers of Giving Tuesday, as much as the many celebrities who have, later came and taken part in it. We also made a bet that if we decided to give Giving Tuesday away as much as possible, that would actually be much better for the movement and for the 92nd Street Y longer term. And so we turned to a lot of smart people that we knew, a lot of friends and a lot of partners, and asked them for help and for advice. When we first set a goal for the first Giving Tuesday, we hoped that 100 nonprofits would sign on and say, we like this idea, we agree to take part. We ended up with 2,500 nonprofit partners that first year, and that was in only 2 months. So we were taking a bet that we could get a very small amount of nonprofits to be adventurous in this with us, and that paid back much more than we could have expected. One of the biggest bets that we took was taking our own name and our own logo off of the name of Giving Tuesday, right? So that instead of being called 92nd Street Y's Giving Tuesday or 92Y Giving Tuesday, as almost everybody in our marketing department would have wanted, or our legal department, we instead decided to take the big risk of not having that be the case. And that's the reason that Giving Tuesday now exists in Spain and exists in Africa and exists all over Europe and exists in all kinds of local communities. Because people can take it and make it reflect the priorities of their organization or their company or them as an individual, right? Or them as a country. So some examples of that are also examples of great collaboration, but very much examples of us taking this bet on not branding Giving Tuesday and seeing what people would do with it. And so some examples are Giving Blue Day is a Giving Tuesday campaign done in the States by one of the biggest universities, the University of Michigan. They've raised over $5 million in 24 hours just last year on Giving Tuesday. And they did it by taking, it's a lot of money, they did it by taking Giving Tuesday and just changing it into their own thing. They didn't contact us to see if they could do this. They just did it. They rarely even use the word Giving Tuesday, but they do it on Giving Tuesday. And so what they do is take advantage of loyalty to that local community and the colors and the shapes and the texture of what that community recognizes and feels passionate about, at the same time as they're taking advantage of all of the global activity and the social media activity that's happening outside of that community, right? So it's not only feeling like they're part of something larger, but also feeling like they're part of something very, very local. The next one, Giving Zoo Day, is an alliance of all of the zoos in the United States. So previously, zoos would have seen each other as competition, right? They do fundraising at a local level for only their zoo, and they try to get all the money they can for that zoo. And so they could use Giving Tuesday as a day to send out an email and say, make donation to us. We're very important, right? Your kids love to come here to the zoo. But instead what they did was to align with all the other zoos. They took a little bet too. Their little bet was, in creating this alliance, we could actually lose money because it could end up that some other zoo tells a more powerful story and somebody else, a donor, sends the money to that zoo instead. But what they really did was, and they won this bet, they elevated the conversation completely away from just being a fundraising solicitation day to actually telling a powerful story about why zoos, not just one zoo, but all zoos, are important to our wildlife conservation and our economy and our children. And that overarching narrative turned out to be much more powerful. The bottom one, Giving Shoes Day, was actually the first organization, I think, right? The very first one to change the name of Giving Tuesday. I remember that because it was so surprising to see somebody take something we created and make something entirely different out of it. And I think that was a critical moment, right? Because we could have said, no, you can't do this. You have to change this back to Giving Tuesday. That's the name we own. We created it. And you have to call you can raise shoes. That's fine. But you have to call it our name. But we didn't. Instead, we celebrated it. We amplified it. We tweeted about it. We posted about it. We celebrated it. And so that encouraged other organizations to think, how can I be that creative? How can I do something that innovative with this idea and make it my own and reflect the priorities of my organization. So this organization, Dress for Success, is an NGO in the United States, a nonprofit that exists to give women who are re-entering the workforce from domestic violence shelters or prison new outfits for interviewing for jobs, right, for re-entering the workforce. And so their Giving Tuesday campaign really reflected their mission and what they were driving towards in that Giving Tuesday. And they've been incredibly successful, more successful on every single Giving Tuesday. And they do that campaign every year. And every year they think up something new and interesting to add. So this past year on Giving Tuesday, they started a social media meme with women posting the shoes that they wore to land the job that they're currently in. Right, so there's lots of fun, lots of humor, lots of sort of celebration of the idea of giving on the most successful Giving Tuesday campaigns that we see in the United States. So the next lesson that we learned is that we can't do it alone, right? We can't make Giving Tuesday a big thing. At that point, we were thinking even in the United States, but we certainly can't make it a big thing globally by ourselves. We're just one institution. We just have our social media channels. We certainly didn't have a lot of resource then. We certainly didn't have any money to pay for advertising or marketing at a US, let alone a global level. So where does that leave you? It leaves you in having to find others who share your mission and amplify it out to others who will then further amplify it out. And that is what has worked. In terms of the different levels of who we call mission multipliers, the first and most important level is just people, right? It's actually people are at the bottom of the pyramid, the mass of numbers, the people who are really passionate about a huge range of different causes. So this middle gentleman is posting on social media on behalf of Giving Tuesday here in Spain. We saw this happening all over the world. Mission multipliers are also other big organizations who will take the idea and feed it out through their networks in a big and powerful way. So a big giving platform that is located in the United States but works at the global level is called Global Giving. Global Giving is a crowdfunding site, a donation site that had their very biggest day ever on Giving Tuesday 2016. They worked with the Gates Foundation, another mission multiplier, to do a $1 million match on Giving Tuesday. But they also did something really interesting, which I would encourage everyone to think a little bit about in thinking about your Giving Tuesday plans for this coming year. They used Giving Tuesday to learn. And that's a really, really good opportunity with Giving Tuesday to think about it as more than just a chance to make money, more than just a chance to think about social media, but actually a chance to think about all the things that you've assumed are the right things to do because that's the way your organization has always done them. And that's a way of thinking in the nonprofit world that is not unique to the United States. It's not unique to Spain. Every place I've been that has a nonprofit sector has this same way of thinking, that we do it this way because it works, and then we assume, right, that it works because we do it this way. So what Global Giving did with the Gates Foundation was actually to do what we call A/B testing, which basically means you try one thing, and you try another thing, and you see which thing works better, right? It's like a very low barrier to entry way to do a randomized controlled trial, right? And it's a way that any organization can do. So what Global Giving did was to tell their donors, you can make a donation today, and the Gates Foundation will match it 50%, right? So your donation will count for 50% higher than you make it, up to a $500,000 match. Or, they said, if you sign up to give every month, so we'll take money automatically right out of your account every month, your donation today will be matched 200%. And that later group had a significantly higher uptake than the 50% match, right? So one really interesting thing that we've seen with Giving Tuesday is that it is more likely that organizations will receive money from first-time donors. That means people who've never given before, and that donors will be more likely to sign up for recurring giving. So if you ever get a question that says, why should I put so much resource into something that's only one day? That's a really interesting statistic to quote, that impact is actually felt throughout the year and beyond that over the whole lifetime of a donor. that somebody who signs up, even for a very small amount of money, you have to think about the lifetime of that donor and what they could mean to your organization. So to think about doing some little testing. And then, of course, the probably the most meaningful mission multipliers that we have are our global leaders. And that you can see the multiplication of that effect in these pictures. This is last year's meeting of all of our global leaders, and this is this year's that we just had earlier this week in Slovenia. So more than double the amount of people representing more than 25 countries. And we anticipate that that number will just continue to grow and grow because there's not a single region in this world that doesn't rely on people who do what we do for a living to try to address the causes that are affecting our communities and our world. The last thing I'll talk about is the importance of collaboration and working together, which is sometimes the hardest thing to do. In working together, we share reward if it works. We also share risk. And there is always the risk that we work together, we try to create something entirely new, and it doesn't work, right? And then we've failed, and we could get in trouble, and all sorts of things could happen. But the possibility of reward is so great that it is well worth it to try to think about how you can find others in this world in Spain and work with them, whether they're competitive organizations or non-competitive organizations, right? You're all ultimately working toward the same thing, right? Which is to look at things that are wrong with this world, right? Or with your communities and make them better. You don't actually exist to make money. The money is just the tool to fix the problem. And in working together, that tool becomes much, much more powerful. So with Giving Tuesday, there are countless examples of this kind of collaboration. Giving Zoo Day, for example, is one of them. These are a couple of visuals. One of these from a very small state in the United States, in Maine, where people came together from all different nonprofits to create a community-wide campaign on Giving Tuesday that benefited all of the nonprofits. And they took this picture to show that they were working with each other and not in competition. They weren't working in competition for those dollars. They were happy to raise money. They all did raise money. But ultimately, they knew that when any of us raise a lot of money, when any of us can better address our causes, we all win, right? That the whole sector gets strengthened. And the My Giving Story contest was a very interesting collaboration, actually, between Giving Tuesday in the United States, Facebook, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And what My Giving Story does is to ask people to submit as a competition an essay a very short essay on what they give to and why they give. And we had hundreds and hundreds of entries this past year and the year before. And then they're voted on socially and then finally judged by a small panel of expert judges. And the prize is monetary rewards for the nonprofits that people write about. And the really interesting thing about My Giving Story is that most of the winners are very small nonprofits. So there's a way to use Giving Tuesday to benefit even a very small organization with a very small operating budget through the power of mission multiplication and collaboration. So just a couple of specific examples of the way that Giving Tuesday has looked in the United States. A couple of partnerships, a couple of the bigger ones that really helped us move the needle. So Facebook, has a what they call a cultural moment, which is a graphic at the top of your news feed that you see. Sometimes it says, "Good morning, Asha. It's raining outside. Stay dry today." And sometimes it says, "Merry Christmas." Sometimes it says, "It's Mother's Day. What are you doing today?" Right? On Giving Tuesday, they made sure that this graphic appeared at the top of every American news feed. So that is really powerful in terms of spreading the word and simply increasing public awareness, whether people then did anything or not. And we don't know if they did because there's really no way to measure that. Google added an "I'm feeling generous" button below the Google search. That was a couple of years ago. PayPal, which I know is active in many countries, not only in the United States, broke the Guinness Book of World Records for most online donations raised for nonprofits in 24 hours. I don't know if anybody knows what the Guinness Book of World Records is, it's not very relevant in the United States anymore. I had this as a physical book as a child, but nobody actually has it as a book anymore, and nobody really pays attention to it. It was less about the Guinness name and much more about having fun with the idea. So if you work with corporate partners, it's a really good idea to brainstorm with them fun things to do around Giving Tuesday, innovative ideas that are going to get some traction in the media and not simply, you will leverage your social channels, you'll leverage ours, really trying to think a little bit more elevated, a little bit beyond that. It's very powerful when corporations work with nonprofits, or even if you're thinking at a very local level, when small businesses work with nonprofits. So we've seen everything from this, which was a collaboration between Uber and Red, to local pizza places working with local animal shelters to donate 50 cents per every slice of pizza sold to that local shelter. So that kind of what we call cross-sector collaboration is really important in spreading the word, also from learning from each other, right? Corporations or businesses have different business models, different priorities than nonprofits. Certain things are more efficient in that world, and we can learn from them. They, in turn, can learn a lot from us about purpose and impact and how to incorporate that back into their business model. So lots of impacts at Giving Tuesday that last beyond that day. Couple of additional examples. Microsoft, which I'm sure everybody is very familiar with, did a very fun multi-platform campaign. That means they did that online, they did it in their retail stores, they did it employee-facing, and they also did it external-facing to raise money for a foundation that gives money to more than 30 different youth causes. They did a match of $250,000 that was met 15 minutes after that match opened in the morning. So very successful. Not surprising, right? Microsoft is a very big company. They have a lot of resource to put toward a big, fancy Giving Tuesday campaign. But this organization, which is called World Bicycle Relief, has an operating budget of about $10,000, $15,000. That's a very, very small operating budget in the United States. Their mission is to get bicycles to children in sub-Saharan Africa who have to walk very long distances to school, right? And so bicycles make a huge difference in their lives. The first year that they participated in Giving Tuesday, their goal was to raise enough money for 100 bikes, and they raised enough money for double that. So then the following year, they raised that goal by another 100 bikes, and once again, they doubled their goal. So through using social media, through powerful storytelling, they were able to do an incredible job without the budget of something like a Microsoft or another corporate. Then you have organizations like PricewaterhouseCoopers, which is a financial services firm that chose to use Giving Tuesday only to speak to their own employees. So it can be a fundraising campaign or a matching campaign, but it can also be something that companies use as a talent retention tool, right? To show the people who work for them that they really care about the causes and other things that their employees care about, right? So PricewaterhouseCoopers didn't do a matching grant or anything, but they really celebrated the passions and causes of their employees. So many different possibilities of ways for people to engage. And then finally, in the States, we're doing a lot of measuring and learning from what's happening with Giving Tuesday. We're a little bit further in, right? This will be our 6th year, and so we've had really a lot more opportunity to collect a lot of numbers, and now we're spending a lot of time looking at those numbers and seeing what they mean, and then turning them into tools and resources that can be used to benefit the campaigns of nonprofits and companies all around the world. So I would encourage you all, whether you're just starting out with Giving Tuesday, whether you've already had some success through the platform or through your own platforms, to think ultimately about what you can learn from the experience of participating, how you can make not only the next Giving Tuesday better, but your whole organization better year-round, which is really one of the ultimate goals of Giving Tuesday. It gives you an opportunity to be innovative, to be creative, to reach out to those around you and work together, and then to apply those learnings to your organization the whole year round. Giving Tuesday is very important in the United States that it is not only focused on fundraising, that it's also about other things. So there's fundraising, there's volunteerism, then there's countless other ways that people have found ways to give, everything from giving clothes to giving cups of coffee to giving hugs. And that's been true all around the world as well. This was a big firm in Texas called Texas Instruments, which organized with the local United Way to bring food to the hungry over the course of a whole day. Another organization signs up organ donors online and has had their most successful days on Giving Tuesday as well. In fact, last year, somebody actually donated a kidney on Giving Tuesday and planned it so that the surgery would take place on that day. So we certainly see Giving Tuesday far extending its original mission of just raising a few dollars on that day, and really being something very special for all the layers of people and organizations who participate. So this is our new global Giving Tuesday logo, reflecting the fact that Giving Tuesday is present as organized, led movements like in Spain, in over 25 countries at this point. It will be well over 30 by the time Giving Tuesday rolls around in 2017. I think we see it as a huge opportunity for people around the world to make a huge impact. And I think Henry and I would be happy to take any questions if any of you have any. Thank you.